I am Mal Vincent, and I am one of the last full-time movie critics in the United States. And this is my story, and it is quite a story. I will tell you, a shocking thing happened to me about a year ago, a little bit less, 10 months ago. The Associated Press called me and said they were doing a story on the last 90 movie critics in the United States. I immediately went into a bit of a panic, and I said, how could this be? Well, I looked at the list. I was on the list as one of the last 90, and they wanted to talk about this, and I thought, well, this is a bit much. They were referring to full-time daily newspaper critics. They were not referring to people who call themselves blogs or internet superficialities or whatever they may call themselves. They were referring to daily newspaper critics. Before this article went into print, which was only a few months later, at least 40 of these people were gone. They were out of their jobs. And I will tell you that when the history of our times are written, there's going to be a chapter in it that you don't even know about yet. It's all under the radar. It's going to be a major happening, and what it is that the newspapers stopped covering the arts. Now, I'm not talking just about movies. I'm talking about dance, symphony, opera, pop music, all of it. If you don't have critics, it's going to be a terrible happening for all of the art films because you don't have the discussion. Now, many of you will say, well, so what? The internet is going to replace newspapers. That has not happened, and I don't think it will happen, because if you read any interview or any review on the internet and you don't agree with it, all you have to do is call up another review and you can find one that agrees with you. So the game that they played with one person being a critic and the other being the audience has largely gone. And the power of the critics have gone. Box office, a picture can be a box office hit and get totally bad reviews. I do think the critics still have some effect upon awards, but not a lot. So anyway, it is a challenge for what will happen. We will have to hang around and see what happens. But as for me, I was extremely lucky in that I existed and worked during the golden era of Hollywood's great period. And it's over. It is over, ladies and gentlemen. It is over. I was lucky to be working and existing during the golden era of the movies. And I want to share some of that with you. Ladies and gentlemen, what a privilege. And what an idea that it will never come back. It is over. Will it ever come back? I doubt it. There was a period when we all went to the movies 3 times a week. Everyone in America went to the movies 3 times a week. Now, they might still go 3 times a week, but movie stars are not what they used to be. We don't have Lana Turner. We don't have Ava Gardner, Betty Davis. We don't have these magical people who were royalty to the American audiences. They don't exist anymore. Now they wash dishes and they get divorced, and they just behave like tramps, let's face it. And we don't really care. In the old days, they behaved like tramps too, but we were scandalized by it. But I existed during a lot of that, and I will tell you, I had dinner with Mae West. I held hands, this very hand, with Audrey Hepburn. I danced very briefly with Elizabeth Taylor. I actually helped Laurence Olivier work on a role, and there were a lot of friends along the way, and a lot of people who were difficult to reach, I managed to reach, because they knew I knew what I was talking about, and I had natural curiosity. Well, I think that you have natural curiosity too, and I'm going to share with you some ideas, some trips, some of the people. All right, so who you want to talk about? Betty Davis? Okay, one of my favorite interviews. I spent many years trying to get an interview with Betty Davis. And I will tell you, none of these interviews come easy. These people are not thrilled to talk to me. I was a critic for a newspaper, a commercial metropolitan daily newspaper in Virginia. I had the 35th largest market in the country. That means there were 34 ahead of me. And then you don't get those interviews automatically. But I will remember I tried for years, and I had dinner one night with Betty Davis's publicity agent. And he told me, and he said, Mal, I will give you her home telephone number. And you call her and ask her to do the interview. I said, no. I said, that's not professional. We don't do that. She said, well, if I ask her to do it, she will say no. But if you ask her, use the Southern accent. You may have noticed the Southern accent. Maybe you haven't. But he said, use the Southern accent, the whole thing. You will talk her into doing it. And he said, well, look, if you don't do it, you're not going to get the interview. So what are you going to lose? I said, he said, do not tell her that I gave you the number. Under no circumstances. I said, all right, I'll do it. So I got up my nerve. I phoned the number. And I told him, I said, she's not going to answer the phone. He said, she is very cheap. She does not have a maid. Believe me, she will answer the phone. So she answers, hello? I said, is this Miss Davis? Who? Is this Miss Betty Davis? Yes. And she says, what is it you want? And I said, I introduced myself, and she says, I am 60 blank, blank, blank years old, and she was at that time. I have said all I have to say. I do not plan to say any more. And so, where did you get this number? I said, well, I got this number from someone at the studio. And she says, oh, how interesting. I have a suit in against them. I'm suing them. I'll just add this to the suit. I said, well, Miss Davis, I assure you I don't mean any harm. And, you may have talked to many people, but you haven't talked to me and my readers in Virginia, and so we need to do this for the local readers. Well, don't they read, in Virginia, don't they read other newspapers? I said, mostly they read me. And she said, look, just send me a note and tell me exactly what you want. The address is number 1 Crooked Mile Road, somewhere in Connecticut. And send me the letter. Blam, click. I thought, oh, I never wrote to her. Flash forward 2 years later. I got the interview. For those of you who are keeping score, it was at the time of Walt Disney's film, I think it was called Escape from Witch Mountain. Not one of Betty Davis's better roles, but memorable to me because it is the role for which I got an interview. So they took me to a hotel suite at Universal Studios Hotel, which for those of you who live in Los Angeles or tourists, is up at the top of the hill above the Universal Studios ride. And they said, wait here. And I waited there, and nothing happened. 15 minutes went by, and I'm thinking, well, I'll spend the rest of my life here in this room. Then there's a knock on the door. I go to the door, and she's standing there with little white gloves and a little pillbox hat. She looked like a little lady who was going to play bridge. And she says, how do you do? I'm Betty Davis, as if I didn't know. And I said, Miss Davis, do come in. And she says, what a lovely suite you have here. I said, well, actually, this is Universal's suite. So she did not take off the gloves. She immediately got out a cigarette. And she said, I understand you will ask me some questions. I hope you do, because otherwise I'm leaving. I said, no, I have some questions. So we began talking, and we talked about many, many things. Gone with the Wind. She says, oh, Gone with the Wind. She said, well, you know that was offered to me before it was to anyone. Well, this is questionable. In fact, it's very questionable. She says, I went in, and I saw Jack Warner, and he says, Betty, we bought this book for you. And she says, I bet it's a pip. She says, he never offered me anything worth doing. He says, well, here it is. And she said, it weighed 20 pounds. And he said, he threw this thing on the table. And I said, is that a book or what? And he says, it's called Gone with the Wind. and you're going to do with Errol? And she says, I am not working with Errol Flynn. He is not a professional. And I said, oh, do you miss Errol Flynn? In a word, no, not a professional. I said, well, she said, and that was the main reason I didn't want to do it, because Errol Flynn was to play Rhett Butler. Well, in reality, we know David O. Selznick was involved. We know that Warner Brothers did not own the rights to it. But nevertheless, when you are talking to Bette Davis, I will give you some advice. Don't contradict her. So anyway, we went ahead. So she talked about many things, and everybody was either professional. She mentioned many actors that she said she would simply say, not a professional. So she talked about the early days, and the day she got off the plane, she said, I got off the train and the studio sent somebody to meet me. And she said, they left and went back to the studio. There was nobody there to meet me. And they told me that, where was I? That I wasn't on the train. And the guy went back and said there was nobody on the train that even remotely looked like an actress. And they brought me in and introduced me to me. And the man says, God, what have they done to us? And she said, well, I'm not a great beauty. She says, I never said I was a great beauty, did I? And so anyway, I said, well, she said, but they found work for me anyway. So I asked her about working with Katharine Hepburn. I said, I understand you're going to make a movie with Katharine Hepburn. Maybe. She says, I don't know why everybody brings that up. She says, it's just two Yankee girls working together. Why are you so interested in me working with Katharine Hepburn? And I said, well, I think it would be a wonderful moment in screen history. She says, oh, you do you? Meantime, she was smoking a cigarette galore. She would take 2 puffs out of the cigarette, grind it out, and hold it for me to light the next one. Now, I am a Southern gentleman, so I do not use a tape recorder. I take notes, and I was lighting her cigarette. I knew she had on a wig, and I'm thinking, I'm going to set the woman on fire. I'm probably going to, it's a wig, I'm going to set the wig on fire. I'm lighting the cigarette, I'm asking questions. She takes 2 puffs and she grinds it out. There was a bowl of cigarette stubs. Stubs, what, anyway, well, those things. Cigarette butts. A pile of, I'm thinking she must spend a fortune on cigarettes because she doesn't smoke them. So she said, I asked him many things, and I said, well, Miss Davis, what was your opinion of working with Joan Crawford? Have you read the book, Mommy Dearest? Yes. I said, well, what did you think of it? And she said, why would Christina lie? I said, well, Miss Crawford was still alive at the time it was, Miss Crawford is dead now. She was alive then. But I said, it seems to me it would have been more fair if Christina had written it when she was alive and she could defend herself. And she said, well, why would she lie? Why do you question this? Well, I said, well, I just thought, it would be better if she could defend herself. She says, look, you, and then she points her finger. And then I think, uh-oh, back up. She says, look, you, I want to tell you something. Just because a person is dead doesn't mean they've changed. I said, oh, okay. I began to think, don't cross this woman. So I was, on that very day, on the day of the interview, you can look it up, check it if you like. On the day of the interview, there was to be a memorial service for Joan Crawford that night at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So, knowing that she hated her, I still would, I thought, tease her a little bit. And I said, are you going to the service for Joan tonight? She said, oh, are they having something for Joan? Well, yes, they were burying her, giving her a service. I said, well, yes, they're having a service. She said, oh, well, no, I haven't been invited. I don't intend to go. But I don't care what they say there tonight. They probably will go on and on. But I don't care what they say there tonight. Joan was a professional, and you can't take it away from her. I said, well, fine. So many things. I don't want to go on forever, but many things. And at one point I asked something, I don't remember what it was. And she said, that was a stupid question. And you were doing so well, too. She said, yes, you were doing very well. But that was a stupid question. Try again. Well. Anyway, it was 2 hours. 2 hours we went. And someone came. It was a definitive Bette Davis interview. Read my book. If I ever write the book, you'll get the rest of the story. But, we're on film here. But I want to tell you, I want to tell you in addition. I went to the Academy that night, about 6 in the afternoon, on a chance that if I got in to the Joan Crawford event. And I got up to the door, and of course the guy said, where do you think you're going? And I said, well, I'm here to attend Miss Crawford's service. And she said, there have been people in line here since 4 o'clock this morning, and the building is entirely full, and it's out of the question. I said, well, I traveled 3,000 miles to be here, and I just thought I would check. I had traveled 3,000 miles, true, but not just for that event. So he said, wait here just a minute. So he came back and says, just a minute, something might open up here. As it turned out, there were 2 rows down front for the service that had been reserved for Miss Crawford's family. There was no one in the 2 rows except for Christina, the author of Mommy Dearest, was the only person sitting there, and she was entirely by herself. And he says, we're opening up the 2 rows for the public, and follow me. So they escort me down. So everybody is watching. I sit down beside Christina. I did not speak to her because I had no idea. For once, I was taken aback. I could not figure out what to say. I said nothing. There was a murmur, and people were looking like, who is this? There were 2 women sitting behind me. I kid you not. This woman said, Elfrida. I will never forget. Her name was Elfrida. I wish you would look. I did not think he would have the nerve to show up here at the funeral. I'm thinking, what is this? What is she thinking? He made life miserable for Joan while she was alive. He was on drugs. He was arrested for drugs. And I did not think he would have the nerve to show up here. So I'm beginning to think, who does she think I am? And then I begin to think, yes, she thinks I'm the son, the orphan son. So I'm thinking, whoever she thinks I am, does she think I cannot hear her? If I was him, would not I be taken aback? So I turned around and stared at the woman. And she immediately, I think, realized that I was not, I think his name was Christopher, who was Joan's adopted son. Mm-hmm. I think she then realized I was not the same. By the way, later I looked him up. He looked nothing like me. But she thought I was the adopted son. So the service went on. And at the end, everybody spoke. Steven Spielberg spoke. John Wayne spoke. Everybody spoke. And on the way out, people came, Steven Spielberg, they came up and said, you have our deepest sympathy. Well, I mean, what do you say? I'm thinking, I want to get out. I'm going to be arrested. But then I thought, I haven't done it. They sat me here, and there were other people who were filled in on the road too, but they just let them in a group. I was the only one they escorted down by myself, and I sat down. I never spoke to Christina. She left immediately, as I was trying to leave immediately. And they were stopping me on the door saying, giving me the sympathy. And so I learned, just say thank you. Just say thank you and keep moving toward the door. But things like that happen when you are in Hollywood during the golden era. And lots of them. And we're going to talk later